The moon hung low in the inky sky, casting eerie shadows that seemed to dance with malevolence. John, a middle-aged man with salt and pepper hair, trudged through the quiet streets, his footsteps echoing like a haunting drumbeat. He had always enjoyed his nightly walks, but recently they had become a harrowing experience. For weeks he had felt a growing sense of unease. It started with subtle disturbances, the feeling of being watched, strange noises in the dark, and fleeting glimpses of something unnatural. But tonight, as he turned into the narrow alley that led to his apartment, a chilling certainty gripped him. The air grew colder, and a shiver crept down John's spine. He quickened his pace, clutching his coat tightly. As he reached the entrance to the alley, a guttural whisper filled the air. "John!" it hissed, a voice that seemed to crawl from the depths of despair. John froze, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew he should ignore it, continue walking, and hope it was merely his imagination playing tricks on him. But the voice persisted, calling his name over and over, each repetition growing more desperate and unhinged. Unable to resist, John turned around, his eyes scanning the shadows. That's when he saw it, a dark, amorphous figure slinking along the walls. It had no distinct form, just a shapeless mass that seemed to ripple and writhe like liquid darkness. "Who are you?" John stammered, his voice trembling. The figure didn't respond, but its presence grew closer, the whispering growing louder and more menacing. John turned to run, but before he could take a single step, the Shapeless Terror lunged at him, engulfing him in its suffocating darkness. John's scream echoed through the night, but to anyone passing by, it would have sounded like nothing more than a wisp of wind. He had vanished into the abyss, consumed by the shapeshifter. Days turned into weeks, and John's disappearance remained a mystery. His friends and family searched for him tirelessly, but the police had no leads. The city's streets became a haunted labyrinth, filled with whispers of a shapeless terror that stalked the night. Meanwhile, John found himself trapped in a nightmarish existence. The shapeshifter was not content with merely consuming his physical form. It had taken hold of his very essence. He was now a prisoner within the shapeless void, a spectator to the creature's malevolent deeds. Every night, the shapeshifter assumed John's form, slipping into his life like a sinister doppelganger. It attended gatherings with his friends, interacted with his colleagues, and even slept in his own bed. But behind those familiar eyes lurked a darkness that only John could sense. He watched helplessly as the shapeshifter manipulated his relationships, turning friends against him and sowing discord among his loved ones. It reveled in the chaos it created, feeding on their fear and despair. One night, as the moon hung low once again, the shapeshifter decided to pay a visit to John's sister, Emily. She had been tirelessly searching for her brother, refusing to believe he was truly gone. The creature's dark form slithered through her open window, its movements fluid and unnatural. As Emily lay in bed, half asleep, the shapeshifter assumed John's form once more. It whispered sweet lies into her ear, convincing her that it was her long-lost brother returned at last. Tears of joy streamed down her face as she embraced the imposter, unaware of the terror that lurked beneath the surface. But John, trapped in his nightmarish prison, refused to be a passive observer any longer. With every ounce of his remaining strength, he reached out to his sister's mind, trying to break through the shapeshifter's deceit. "Emily, it's not me," he whispered into her dreams, his voice a faint echo of his former self. "Don't trust it. It's a monster." Emily's eyes widened as the truth slowly dawned on her. She pushed the imposter away, scrambling out of bed. The shapeshifter, now revealed in its true form, hissed and contorted in rage. "Run, Emily," John urged, using all his remaining energy to shield her from the creature's malevolent influence. Emily fled from the room, screaming for help. The shapeshifter pursued her, its shapeless form writhing in anger and frustration. But the power of John's love for his sister was stronger than the creature's darkness. As the first rays of dawn broke over the horizon, the shapeshifter, weakened and vulnerable, retreated into the shadows. John's sacrifice had saved Emily, but he remained trapped within the shapeless void, his existence forever entwined with the horror that had stalked him. The shapeshifter continued to haunt the city's streets, searching for its next victim, while John's spirit endured its own nightmarish existence, forever bound to the creature that had stolen his life. In the quiet of the night, they were both condemned to wander, two souls forever entangled in darkness.
Shapeless Terror, Part 2.
Weeks had passed since that fateful night when Emily had narrowly escaped the clutches of the shapeless terror that had impersonated her brother John. She couldn't sleep, plagued by nightmares of that monstrous entity and the brother she had lost. She refused to give up on him. Determined to free her brother's spirit from the malevolent shapeshifter, Emily delved into the arcane and obscure. She combed through dusty tomes and consulted eccentric experts in her quest for answers. Her research led her to a mysterious ritual, one that could potentially sever the connection between her brother's soul and the insidious creature. Emily gathered the necessary ingredients and performed the ritual on the anniversary of John's disappearance. As the moon hung low in the sky, she chanted ancient incantations, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and hope. Shadows danced around her, and the air grew heavy with anticipation. Suddenly, a piercing howl filled the room, and the shapeshifter materialized before her. It was furious, its form shifting and writhing in a grotesque display of rage. Emily stood her ground, her heart pounding, and continued the incantation. The battle between light and darkness raged on, as Emily's determination clashed with the shapeshifter's malevolence. Sparks of energy crackled around them, and the room seemed to tremble under the weight of their struggle. Emily knew that this was her chance. With one final surge of energy, she uttered the words that would sever her brother's spirit from the shapeshifter's grasp. A blinding burst of light erupted from the ritual circle, engulfing both Emily and the creature in a blinding, radiant glow. The shapeshifter screamed in agony as its form twisted and contorted, unable to withstand the purity of the ritual. Emily felt an overwhelming sense of power coursing through her, a connection to something ancient and profound. With a final, triumphant cry, she banished the shapeshifter, casting it into the shapeless void from whence it came. Emily fell to the floor, drained and gasping for breath. The room was quiet once more, save for her own labored breathing. She had done it. She had defeated the shapeless terror and freed her brother's spirit. Or so she thought. As Emily caught her breath, she felt a presence behind her. Slowly, she turned around, her heart sinking in her chest. Standing there was John, or at least, someone who appeared to be John. He looked just like her brother, right down to the smallest detail. "Emily," he said, his voice soft and familiar. "You did it. You saved me." Emily's eyes welled with tears as she rushed to embrace the man who looked like her brother. It had been so long, and she had missed him dearly. "I knew you were still in there," she whispered. But as she held on to him, she couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something was off. It was as if a shadow still clung to him, a darkness that had survived the ritual. Days turned into weeks, and Emily tried to convince herself that her brother was truly back. They spent their time together, catching up on the moments they had lost. John's presence brought comfort and happiness to Emily, but there were moments, fleeting and subtle, when she saw a glint in his eyes, a hint of malevolence. One night, as they sat together in the living room, Emily decided to confront him. "John," she began hesitantly, "there's something I need to ask you." He turned to her, his expression unreadable. "What is it, Emily?" "During the ritual, I felt something dark. I saw a shadow, and I thought I had banished it, but now I'm not so sure. Are you really my brother?" John's face twisted in a sinister grin, and the room seemed to grow colder. "Oh, Emily," he said, in a voice that sent shivers down her spine. "You should have never meddled with forces you couldn't understand." Before Emily could react, the room was consumed by darkness, and the Shapeless Terror re-emerged, its form shifting and writhing. It had deceived Emily, taking on the appearance of her brother to infiltrate her life once more. Emily tried to fight back, but the shapeshifter was too powerful. It overwhelmed her, snuffing out her resistance and leaving her trapped in her own mind, a helpless spectator to the horrors that unfolded. As the days turned into weeks, the shapeshifter, now wearing Emily's form, resumed its sinister agenda. It infiltrated Emily's circle of friends and family, sowing discord and chaos, just as it had done with John. The city's streets once again became a haunted labyrinth, filled with whispers of a shapeless terror that stalked the night. Meanwhile, John's spirit remained trapped in the shapeless void, forever deceived by the shapeshifter that wore his sister's face. The battle for redemption had taken a dark turn, and the true horror was far from over.
Tune in next time for the next series on Portals of Terror.